Welcome all. In this webinar, you will learn about how to get started with micro-credentials and how to create them for the INGENIUM European University Alliance. We have good program today and there will be time for questions at the end of the webinar. You don't have now microphone or video camera rights, but you will be given them in the end of the webinar. And you can feel free to use the chat function also during this webinar. This webinar will be recorded and shared on the INGENIUM YouTube channel later. So recording is now on. My name is Tiina Parkkonen and I am from Southeastern Finland University of Applied Sciences. Yeah, I am project manager and leading the innovative teaching and lifelong learning at the European University Alliance, INGENIUM European University Alliance, sorry. And here's my colleague.
Hi everybody, my name is Kai Weaver and I'm also from the Southeastern Finland University of Applied Sciences, where I work as a pedagogical specialist in this work package.
Thanks. There are people joining all the time in and we are letting them same time here. So here's the program. In this webinar, we will introduce you the INGENIUM Micro-Credentials and explain what they are and show you the different possibilities and models of implementation. After this, Jeremiah will show us the case study of MTU's digital wellbeing micro-credential, and then it's back over to Kai and me, and we will show you how to make micro-credentials for INGENIUM. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Eeva Kuoppala, INGENIUM Project Director at XAMK, and give her the stage for opening this webinar. Please, Eeva.
Thank you very much, and I'm so pleased to see all of you here with this getting the perspectives for this extremely interesting and important topic. And I have only this one slide to maybe provoke your ideas that why we should be doing these micro-credentials. And I recently read this interesting article about this non-degree education in Europe, where they were also mentioning the micro-credentials. And the key points were that the higher education in the future looks that it will be entailing both degree and non-degree education. And as we all have felt in our everyday work that there is this kind of transformation going on in working life and obviously also in education. And the lifelong learning, digitalization and internationalization are the core drivers of that transformation. And the micro-credentials as this kind of agile new education products in a sense are seen as a great opportunity to innovate and diversify and enlarge higher education institutions' education offer. And that is why they are in a sense even some kind of hit topic at the moment. And yeah, and there is a lot of discussions about how do we define the micro-credentials in INGENIUM countries. There are a lot of work being doing nationally, and in INGENIUM we have gathered this information, and today we will hear more about these definitions and how we can actually start to produce the micro-credentials. But just shortly, that I'm very pleased that you are here, gathered here around this topic, and I highly encourage you to collaborate with the micro-credentials and with the working life partners probably too, and create some new learning opportunities, not only for the degree students but also for the lifelong learners. So welcome all. Thank you.
Thank you, Eeva.
Thank you. So it's clear that the promise of micro-credentials has the potential to revolutionize higher education. and spread our knowledge to wider audiences for their professional development. But one of our key challenges is actually something as simple as defining what is a micro-credential. Because everybody has a different idea of what they are. So it's important that before we go further, we're all on the same page with the definition of micro-credentials. In INGENIUM, we have adapted the EU recommendation and some of the best practices from our own European University Alliance institutions and from other European University Alliances to create a definition of micro-credentials that works for us. In INGENIUM, we see micro-credentials as supporting professional development and employability. Micro-credentials are proof that a learner has completed the required learning outcomes to be certified in a specific topic, perhaps by completing courses or having their prior learning recognized. Micro-credentials are short, focused learning experiences that certify specific knowledge or skills. They are not necessarily degree programs. Micro-credentials can be individual courses, but also several courses can make up and be stacked into a larger micro-credential module. At INGENIUM, our micro-credentials are transparently produced, flexible, transferable, and quality assured. They complement our formal degree studies, but are not necessarily part of any formal learning provision. Some are targeted to meet the needs of working life and other lifelong learning goals. So this is quite a broad definition that we have of micro-credentials, but it's our starting point because we want to see that these models that we produce are flexible and can meet the specific needs of our learners, wherever they might be and whatever their career stage is at the time. So now that we all I hope we understand what a micro-credential is. Dina, can you change the slide, please? Thank you. It's important to understand how they're implemented in practice. Because INGENIUM cannot issue micro-credentials itself, the task falls for each institution to be able to issue its own micro-credentials that are realigned and supported by INGENIUM. So what this means in practice is that we've had to create different sets of models for our members to be able to issue micro-credentials that can somehow be called INGENIUM micro-credentials. Because we have these different goals and visions depending on what the learner needs, micro-credentials themselves and the models of implementation are different. For some, micro-credentials are stackable sets of courses, and for others, they are individual learning entities. For example, like one 5-credit course. All of these models are possible within INGENIUM. You just need to be aware of the different models we have. So let's go through these a little bit. So the first model we have for micro-credentials is the absolute simplest to make. It's a realigned micro-credential. So for this, you might have a course or micro-credential at your own institution, which is popular or has been successful or targeted at a specific audience. This might be a really well-designed course that you wish to make available to the entire INGENIUM Alliance. In this case, you would simply take the course, propose as a new INGENIUM micro-credential, and make sure that it is aligned with our criteria. It's quite simple to do and a great way of getting your teaching spread beyond the borders of your own institution. One of the goals of INGENIUM is to connect and share and learn, and to share our best practices with each other and teach together. The next model we have is the jointly developed micro-credential, and this is precisely what it sounds like. 2 or more partners come together to create a micro-credential in partnership. This could be done in education projects, through joint agreements, or as a passion project of wonderful educators who wish to connect, share, and learn and work across borders. In this case, we would expect to see a common criteria developed and a common curriculum using the expertise of all partners involved. This might be jointly accredited by 2 institutions or simply issued by the leading partner. There might be many different courses that make up this jointly developed micro-credential, or there might just be the one. But the important thing with this model is that more than one partner is working together to produce the micro-credential. And we really encourage you to seek out like-minded educators to build something together. And through this, we have several programs like the Education Lab projects and Staff Academy, where you can meet other educators who are interested in developing and producing education products for INGENIUM. The next model we have is the decentralized model. And as with anything decentralized, it initially sounds a little bit complicated. So we've made a quite nice image to explain it. In this decentralized micro-credential, you see that Zamk is the leader, and we are responsible for coordinating each entity that makes up the micro-credential. This example includes courses from France, Zamk, and the Medical University of Sofia, Bulgaria. Each course is created following the institution's regular practices for making courses, but it is also aligned with the other courses in the micro-credential and INGENIUM's quality assurance criteria. Each course should be built and developed through with the other partners involved, so that all of the elements come together and work as one. Each course in the micro-credential are open to the entire alliance, and they are taught in English. The target audience are determined in the beginning, and they might include people, for example, in the working world, INGENIUM students, or the general public with an interest in the topic. Once each individual course is finished, they are awarded ETCS for that course from the institution. In this example, we've also decided to showcase that institutions can issue digital open badges as well. Once the entire module is finished, the micro-credential is awarded. It's really important that each institution makes a place for that's within their degree programs. In this proposal, the Innovation Committee assesses the value of the micro-credential as a whole. The creation of a single piece of learning material begins, and then they approve the final offering. So in this decentralized micro-credential, we see that this really captures the spirit of the alliance, with different partners producing different courses in their own institution, and then they are assembled together into a stackable micro-credential. And this example is but as we know, micro-credentials can be up to 59 ECTS. So there really is scope to build larger programs here. For example, on everything related to internationalization of working life, to diversity and inclusion in education, for students, for staff, for working life, and for everybody. These models are just a sort of example of what we're thinking about and how we can start to create micro-credentials. And we hope that they provide you with an idea of the different possibilities that exist, so that if you have a course in your own institution that you want to upscale and offer to INGENIUM partners, you can make a realigned one. If you want to develop something entirely new together with your partners, you can make a jointly developed micro-credential. And if you want to make something even larger, but not quite the scope of a joint degree program, then the decentralized micro-credential enables you to do that. And these models are a little bit abstract, so it's my great pleasure to hand over to Jeremiah, who will introduce the micro-credential that has already been made, which is the first micro-credential offered to INGENIUM. And he'll talk a little bit more about this. Jeremiah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kai. I will indeed try to make it less abstract, and try is probably the operative word. Okay, so can you see my screen? Yep, perfect. So hi, everybody. Great to be with you today. Thanks to Tina and Kai for the invitation to speak about this. Linking back to what Kai was just talking about, MTU recently led out on the first jointly developed course that was offered to students across INGENIUM by staff from across INGENIUM. So this course was led by my colleague, Dr. Una O'Brien here from the Department of Computer Science at MTU. And I worked with her on this course in my role, in my capacity as an educational technologist and instructional designer, and also did a little bit of teaching and workshops on this course as well with Una. So just in terms of what I'm going to talk about today, I think I have about 15 minutes approximately, but I'm just going to give you a bit of background about the Digital Wellbeing Program, or the module that was created. Just talk a little bit about it, what its aims were, the team that were involved with it, and the lab week, a part of the face-to-face component of the course. Just to give you some background context, about the course delivery. So that was delivered on the INGENIUM education platform, or the Moodle LMS instance that's hosted by our colleagues at the University of Crete. And then on topic with the webinar today, I'll be talking about the micro-credential. So some of the considerations we had around the implementation of that, so creating a badge and a certificate. a little bit about the design, a little bit about how the course was accredited, and about the issuance of that, so how we issued that. So we form Open Badge Factory, which is hosted by colleagues at the University of Hovde, for issuance of the badge, the actual kind of micro-credential badge. And there was also a cert issued, and I'll talk about that, and that'll happen at module completion. So yeah, as I mentioned, in terms of what I'm talking about today, this is work that was myself and Una O'Brien, who I mentioned, is from the Department of Computer Science, and she was the program and module lead for this. And so we had a lot of kind of work to do in terms of the kind of micro-credential and the certification and the issuance of that. And this course really was a pilot for INGENIUM in terms of how they could kind of jointly develop a program with colleagues from across the Alliance and students, how they could issue some kind of certification. So that's kind of really what I'm talking about today. But in terms of the course itself, it was genuinely a huge undertaking, and a credit to Una and the team involved in this. You could see there were about 20 teaching staff who delivered this, colleagues from MTU, Hovde, ZAMP, Cruon, Pescara, Yash, all the way down Karlsruhe. So a really, really broad teaching team involved in this. So the course came out of discussions that Una had with colleagues from across INGENIUM at various workshops, and other workshops, 10 days of INGENIUM events and so on. And in those meetings, Una and colleagues identified the negative effects of overuse of digital technology for distraction and negative effect on staff and students and on their well-being. The aim of the module then was to develop student awareness of the issues and responsibilities in digital technology use. So that was a kind of primary thing, and also thinking about their future responsibilities. So I guess something that would be focused on in her research, the ethics of kind of safe technology use. So for example, in universities, we have very strict ethical kind of guidelines in terms of how we conduct research, how we create products for industry or whatever that might be. Whereas out in industry, if we think of technology companies producing apps that are used by children, for example, there's very little in terms of ethics, or at least very little accountability. They can rapidly produce a product and put it out into market without really knowing the ramifications of those tools. And so this course was developed a little bit with that in mind, in the sense that the students and the graduates of our universities now are going to be the ones producing some of those technologies in the future. So we want to instill those ethics in them. So that was kind of a guiding, I guess, feature of Una's thinking for the development of the module. So that's a bit of context. So this was delivered as a kind of blended intensive program. So it was delivered primarily online. The lectures were primarily delivered online, but then there was an in-person lab week. It was very multidisciplinary, reflecting the different strengths of the institutions across INGENIUM. So it was business, engineering, computer science, medicine, math, psychology, physical education, and so on, all kind of thinking about technology, well-being, and so on. Multinational collaboration in the first semester of 24-25. So it finished up last December, and then the students would have been graded. The marks would have been ratified at NTU because that's where they're from, and then we would have issued a micro-credential badge and a certificate, and I'll get to that. And just finally, about the course as well, some of the kind of frameworks that thinking about were frameworks like the Healthy Campus Charter, the Okanagan Charter, which is an international charter for health in universities and colleges, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Inner Development Goals, which kind of feed into the Sustainable Development Goals. So there are some of the key frameworks involved in this course. As I mentioned, it was mostly online, and there was an in-person staff week, an in-person week where students travelled to MTU, as well as staff and colleagues like Laura Hackman at ZAMP came here and delivered sessions on digital storytelling and meditative photography, for example. I did a session on sound walking. Lots of kind of ideas about getting students away from technology at times, or using them for more positive and creative kind of purposes. So here's just kind of a quick overview of the different topics that were delivered. Topics like artificial intelligence, technology design, health and well-being, online cultures by colleagues from Pescara, for example, and so on. And then there in the middle, you can see the lab week, the different kind of topics that were delivered there at the lab week. So that's kind of an overview of the course. So I guess for colleagues who are on the webinar and are interested in delivering a shared course, and they might not be familiar yet, INGENIUM has its own virtual learning environment, VLE, or alternatively, some people call this a learning management system, an LMS, whichever way you call it. We have the INGENIUM Education Platform, which is often referred to as the IEP here. And that's how we delivered the course. We signed students up from across the Alliance on there, and I can show you a little bit of that very briefly. Second. And actually, sorry, just turn back to my slides. I think I saw Matty on the call there a moment ago as well. This was a pilot course. So the micro-credential itself, credential was a pilot in itself. The course was also a pilot, the first one that was run on the INGENIUM Education Platform. So it was the first attempt at kind of bringing a course to life there. You can see there on the top, the banner is quite great. There's an image in the background. So colleagues like Matty and myself are involved in a small working group with colleagues from the University of Crete at the moment to try and improve this as much as we can in terms of the user interface and the user experience. And if I jump over to the course itself, you can see that, for example, that grey banner along the top there is now removed, and we've got a bit of a cleaner interface, and we're kind of working on this. So for those of you who haven't used it, this is what the INGENIUM Education Platform looks like, the Moodle instance. We tried to build this out in a way that worked for all the students. For example, there was a very large team, so we tried to make sure that the students could find out a little bit about all the different teaching staff. So you can see there a list of all the different staff, and you can click into them and kind of read a little bit about them. We want to make sure that the course foregrounded all the kind of core pedagogical information or course structure information that they would need, like when the course was taking place, the labs and so on, what the learning outcomes were for the course. There's a program syllabus or brochure that's available, how they were going to be assessed, and so on. So in terms of good instructional design and good pedagogical practice, trying to kind of lay something out that was intuitive for the students and they could get all the information that they needed, mindful, of course, that many of them are working in English as a second language. And also, and I think this is good practice as well for anyone designing a course, embedding a video if you can at the beginning with the course leader, talking about the course, introducing it to the students. And again, in terms of an international course where we're presenting across the Alliance, I think it's good to do this. It kind of personalizes the teaching staff a little bit for the students. So that's the INGENIUM Education Platform, and that's where the course was delivered. That's how the students attended classes. So they attended via the online classroom. This was done via standing Zoom room meetings twice a week. And so that's kind of how the course was delivered. Just give you a sense of that. And as I mentioned, there were 20 staff enrolled on that course, all involved in teaching variously, and 40 students enrolled from across INGENIUM. So kind of bring us back to Kai's discussion earlier on. So this, I guess, in terms of Kai's models are, this would have been a jointly developed micro-credential. So model number 2, there was a common curriculum developed based on the expertise of all the different teaching staff. And I guess the accreditation part is interesting. So I think on your slide there, Kai, you had a joint accreditation of a micro-credential, but you mentioned that it could be issued or accredited by one institution, and that's what happened here. So, for example, if I just jump back here, sorry. So UNA would have submitted this module as a module for acceptance at MTU. So, and that would have been approved by the academic board at the institution. And here you can see the kind of module outline that would have been submitted for this before it was approved. There would have been clear learning outcomes. There would have been recommendations, indicative content, like the type of content that was going to be discussed, the coursework, and so on. So if I scroll on there, yeah, the workload, the course load, and so on. And this is important to make sure that it was accredited and could carry European transfer credit, so ECTS. And this module was approved for as a 5 ECTS module. So that would have been something that Una would have done very early on in the production of this course. So that's in terms of the kind of course approval and accreditation of the actual module. And I guess, and this is probably work that Kai and Tina and others are working on. I guess the accreditation piece is probably the complicated one, because every institution will have their own processes for that. It'll be easier for some than others. If a course is accredited in one institution, can another institution then kind of approve that in a secondary kind of manner? Or do they have to go through a whole new accreditation process? There are questions I don't have answers to, but some of you might, and I guess there were things that you might have in mind as you kind of do this. So from my position as a kind of educational technologist and instructional designer, digital badges and micro-credentials are a familiar concept to me. To me, they're usually represented by that digital badge, and within that, they have metadata embedded, and that metadata would be the information that was on that module descriptor, so the learning outcomes and so on. But it was interesting when I talked to Una about this, that was all fine and agreed, but Una also had concerns about the currency of these kind of awards. When I say currency, I mean how people understand them and receive them. So for example, let's say hypothetically in Ireland, maybe someone recognizes a digital badge and a micro-credential as something that's kind of substantial and kind of weighty, but that might not be the case in another country. When a student finishes their course and goes out to industry and looks for a job, if they show that badge, the potential employer might not recognize it. And in which case, Una said it might be prudent for us to give the students a certificate as well. And in that way, the certificate might be kind of seen as something more weighty, depending on the employer and depending on, their familiarity with the idea of micro-credentials and certificates. So what we did in the end was create both, actually. And if I just go back here. And so, for example, here on this micro-credential, you can see, or sorry, on the certificate, we added in some of the kind of important information. So that module outline descriptor is there. That was hyperlinked into the final certificate. So that's the official code that shows that at MTU, at our university, this is an approved module and it's equivalent to 5 ECTS. So any employer could click on that and see what they had studied, which I thought was kind of a good idea. And then additionally, then the actual badge that we issued, we added that down there in the bottom right. So that's kind of like our official stamp, as it were, showing that the certificate is linked to that digital badge, to that micro-credential. So that was something that we kind of came up with. And again, this, just to reiterate, this is all kind of a pilot. This is the approach that we took. You might have a different approach, but hopefully some of the ideas here will be helpful for you. So in terms of the badge then, we did have, sorry, I'm still there. Yeah, something popped up on my screen, apologies. So in terms of the badge then, we issued a couple of different designs. What we ended up doing was going back to an existing design that INGENIUM had used for something else, and then we just kind of tweaked that a little bit, so we gave it our name. Something Una was keen on was the final certificate someone gets when they graduate from Munster Technological University has this gold stamp on it, and around the outside of it you have the name of the university, and so that's something that we added into the micro-credential, or into the digital badge that kind of contains the micro-credential, as it were. And you can see that they're around the outside of the badge, and we wanted to distinguish the badge from another one that might not be for a weight-bearing module that might not have 5 ECTS, and that's why we added that to the bottom of this badge here. And so if I just maybe go to the next slide there, you can see a little bit about what I'm talking about. So where are we? So here, this is something that appears on the bottom of certificates of the MTU graduates, and you can see that the name kind of travels around there, and we tried to add that to our version of the badge here. I'm more than happy to share these Adobe Illustrator files with people if they're helpful. And then you can kind of reuse them and tweak them and change them to something else. And so these were original badges that had been issued and approved at INGENIUM level. So we tried to keep in line with that. We'd proposed some different iconography that kind of suggested digital well-being, but in the end we decided to just keep the INGENIUM logo in the middle and stick with that. So that was kind of the design process that happened there. So in terms of badge issuance then, which is, I guess, the next piece of puzzle, we're using Open Badge Factory, which is, as I mentioned at the beginning, provided to us by the University of Hovde, as far as I understand. And there's a badging working group working on this, and that's led out by Johanni Karonen, if I'm correctly pronouncing his surname there, at University of Hovde. So if anyone is intending to produce a micro-credential, you can either reach out to your educational technologist in your institution or reach out to Joni at Hovde, and he can kind of point you in the right direction. But just to give you an idea of what that looked like, that process. Let's see. So here, this is the back end of Open Badge Factory. So this is the platform. This is it's a kind of a web-based platform, and in the back end you can see along the top there, I've got a number of tools, or issuer tools and creator tools. And you can see here there are a number of different badges that are being issued for the winter school and so on. And down here in the middle, you can see we've got the digital wellbeing badge that we issued. So maybe I could just show you, actually, maybe let me go back in here. How am I doing for time there, Kai?
About 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. So so here you can see the badge is just a visual representation of the micro-credential. And then inside here, we've added all of that information that you would have seen here in this approved module document. So we've got the different tags that are associated with this. We've got the course description. We've got the criteria, how many hours of learner efforts are involved in this. And again, all of this information is available to a potential employer once they click on that link that we embedded in the that's embedded in the badge and the certificate, so they can find all this information. And this is the badge issuance process, so you can review the badge. This is how we've set it up with all this information. There's some badge details. You would select just following this timeline along the top, you would select the recipients. You would do a test run of this, something I would recommend. We had to do a number of test runs to make sure this worked well, and then we would confirm and issue that. And then students would all simultaneously receive their final award. And in terms of the digital wellbeing module, this happened after the marks were ratified at the institutional level. So, Una had to bring the marks to the exam board. The exam board would have assessed them. External examiner would have looked at them. They would have been approved. And once that process was done, we were ready to issue the badge. So that's how that process would have worked. And then, just mindful of time, this is what the final badge certificate would have looked like. And so as you can see, there's a little description. There's the name of the person. There's that module code that's hyperlinked. And then down on the bottom right, you can see the actual badge as well. So that's kind of the overview of what we did, a little bit of a kind of a sense of the module itself and our process in terms of thinking about the awarding of the micro-credential via the badge and the certificate. We have some resources to share. So if anyone would like them, you can sign up here and we can send you some resources from the module. We've got some trainers videos and some other resources. I can share these via Tina and Kai again also. And if you'd like to know more about it, you can reach out to Una or myself. There's our information there. And hopefully that's been helpful in terms of just kind of a bit of a case study. I can share more information with Kai and Tina as well. Can I pop out a link rather than the QR code? Yeah, I will do that. I'll put that in the chat there in a moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Really interesting case example, and thank you for sharing this information, and people can contact for sure for you also. Let's see next our production model. Again, we are quite practical in this thing. We have created a production model to standardize INGENIUM Micro-Credentials, ensuring they are of high quality and have consistent feel. To create micro-credentials, you follow a structured process from idea proposal to pedagogical review and finalization. Here you can see the INGENIUM Micro-Credential production model at the moment, which consists of three main stages: design, production, and finalization. And in this design stage, you create the material following your own institutional practices, and you should receive resources from your university, and you should consult your supervisor before contacting us. And you also submit an education. You can also submit an education lab project proposal, as there is an ongoing call at the moment. This allows you to apply for resources and funds to develop your micro-credentials. And we will share the link in the chat, and Kai actually already did. And this is a good way also to get funding. And once you have the idea, you fill in the idea form and we provide feedback. More details will be covered in the next slide when we proceed. In the production stage, you produce the material, for example, to INGENIUM LMS, the Moodle, what we have been discussing before. You follow your own university's practices and normal procedures, but you should also, of course, follow INGENIUM's quality assurance practices too. All these relevant documents can be found in the soon-to-be-launched Pedagogical Resource Bank in INGENIUM's LMS Moodle. There we are collecting good practices from all INGENIUM partner universities to help develop educational material throughout the Alliance. And finally, in the finalization stage, the course is completed according to existing institutional procedures. If XAMK, for example, is producing a realigned micro-credential, XAMK will be responsible for issuing the credits and certification. And if there are multiple partners involved, which we of course hope a lot, there might be joint agreements, or one partner may take an administrative lead. We ask you to fill in the micro-credential descriptor in the end to ensure the micro-credential is easily transferable across the Alliance. We are at the beginning, I have to say, of this INGENIUM micro-credential process, and we are excited to pilot and develop them. And this Jeremiah's example was a great pilot example, and this is what we want more and more. And this might seem a bit complicated now, but as we produce more micro-credentials, we will work to streamline and improve the process. Your participation and open feedback are crucial, and as you create these micro-credentials. So that is the model and this practical way, but how do we implement this in practice? Kai, you maybe say something about this.
Gladly. So if you're interested in creating micro-credentials for INGENIUM, how do you get started? Well, first you visit the landing page for micro-credentials, and I've just shared the link in chat. Read the page carefully and familiarize yourself with the information then. Then, when you're ready, submit your idea via the micro-credential idea proposal form, which is a wonderful name. Let me just share the link in chat now. This form will be sent to your local innovation lead at your own institution. They will set up a pedagogical review of your idea and may be involving different actors such as students, subject matter experts, and pedagogical specialists to review the idea and provide you with constructive feedback to help you develop your idea further. The scope of this review is on a case-by-case basis, and it's entirely dependent upon your local innovation leader's judgment. They will outline the following steps on how to proceed further with creating your micro-credential, and will be in regular touch with them to make sure that everybody is on the same page with how these proceed. Once you've submitted the idea proposal and it's approved, in step 3, we send you into the wild to create your micro-credential. You follow good pedagogical practices, such as writing a pedagogical script, adhering to inclusive learning design principles, and producing all the learning material with INGENIUM branding. You can create the micro-credential on your your institution's learning management system or INGENIUM's learning management system, or deliver it in a classroom. It doesn't have to be autonomous and self-study, but it's a great idea if it is, because then you can have more people from around the Alliance participating. But it also does work in a local setting too. Once the material is finished, contact your local innovation leader again and ask them to set up a review. This is really important because we learn best through cooperation and feedback. And we want all of our INGENIUM branded micro-credentials to be of the highest quality. And so reviewing the material before it's published is just a great practice. In this step, your material will be checked and comments will be provided if needed. Again, this is up to the local innovation leader to decide on the scope. Once the material is reviewed and everything is finalized and you've made any necessary changes, you complete the micro-credential descriptor form. This is a little bit of duplicate work, but the micro-credential descriptor form has a common set of criteria that we've agreed upon as an alliance for what constitutes a micro-credential. It has all of the different information needed for a micro-credential to be accredited in another institution. And so it's really important that it's completed. There's also a self-assessment of things like the quality assurance, licensing and copyright issues, and accessibility requirements. Once everything's done, ready, and all the right boxes are ticked, the micro-credential can be published in the course catalog and open to the entire Alliance for enrollment when possible. Obviously, this is not always possible if there are different languages involved. Not all of the micro-credentials need to be in English, for example. And then we come to the final stage. We really hope that when you make your micro-credential and the students have participated, that it's a success and that you gather feedback from your students. When it's time to finish, the lead partner responsible for issuing the micro-credential will deal with things like awarding credits, certification, and all these sorts of things. Perhaps they will also issue digital open badges as well to all those who have successfully achieved the learning outcomes. There is, as Jeremiah said, a sort of issue of currency here, but it's also important to think about what the learner needs and what would benefit them. There are different settings, as Jeremiah said, micro-credentials might work for one thing, ECTS certificates might work for another, and digital open badges for another. Given the learner choice is also important here. Once everything's done, reflect upon what went well and what might be improved in future iterations, and be in touch with us as well so that we can streamline this process and improve it as we go forward. And this is how micro-credentials are created in INGENIUM. As Tina mentioned, we're in the pilot phase and we're really looking for educators to produce the first batch of micro-credentials for the Alliance. We're excited and we hope that you are as excited as we are about producing micro-credentials. We believe there's great potential for these for developing and democratizing education with micro-credentials and improving learning experiences for students. Micro-credentials can give them more flexibility to learn at their own pace and in their own time about things that can benefit them and their professional skills and competences. So this is the creation process for INGENIUM Micro-Credentials. And now it's time, I believe, for questions.
Thank you, Kai. Yes, you can raise your hand and we can open the mic and camera for you if you have any question, or you can also put chat your questions.
Just while you're waiting there, Fiona had a question for me in the chat there, but I don't seem to have access to the chat for some reason. It says it's only available during the meeting, but I'm very sure I'm in the meeting. So
okay, you cannot see it, or
no,
you
I
cannot
can see
answer.
it, but
Okay,
it won't let me type for some reason. But yeah, Fiona was asking how long did the whole process of creating the course badge and micro-credential take in total? So the process started before I was involved. So in terms of Una's conversations with other colleagues from across INGENIUM, so that maybe was happening over a period of time, months, I'm sure. And then when she was ready to deliver the course, she came to me to help with the instructional design part and the kind of ed techie side of things. She was going to deliver it in September, so I think we started those conversations in like the March beforehand. So we had some time to start building out the Moodle course, getting that together. And then while the course was in process, we started working through the badge and micro-credentials. So some of it was happening simultaneously, but it's certainly, if you're jointly delivering a course, you'd want to be preparing several months in advance of launching the course. And certainly if you're getting course approval as well in an institution, that would obviously take a period of time depending on the institution.
Thank you, Jeremiah, for your answer. There is again question for you, Jeremiah.
Yeah, so I think that would have been one of the first steps. So, sorry, Fiona asks, did Una do the course approval before that? Yeah, and I wouldn't have been involved at that stage of the process. So she would have designed the module with colleagues and then sent that for approval. And then once approved, I would say that's when she came to me to start kind of rolling it out. Yeah, so the virtual learning environment, the VLE or the LMS, as some people might refer to it, the INGENIUM uses the platform Moodle. So yeah, that's what's used. The INGENIUM education platform that's hosted on the Moodle platform.
Thank you. I think there are no more questions, and I think we have kind of used also our time. So I would like to thank you all for joining today's webinar on getting started with INGENIUM Micro-Credentials from design to finalization. We hope you found the session informative and are excited to begin developing your own micro-credentials with open minds. That's what we hope. And of course, like it said, we really need your participation and feedback when we refine these processes. And we look forward to seeing your innovative contributions. Thank you for all.
Thank you, everybody.
And have a nice day.